we formed this team. There we go. Um, we formed the. Maybe I should start over the recording.
Yeah, you know what? That's probably a great idea. I'm going to pause it real quick so we could cut it.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining the AWS Cleveland user group. I'm going to just turn it right over to Eric, who's going to start his presentation.
Thanks. Yeah. Hey, everyone. Again, welcome, and thanks for joining and taking your time out of your day to come listen and hopefully learn some things. The title is we built an AI platform using AI, and so I want to talk through a bit about what we built. What is this AI platform? How we built it, why we built it, and kind of a little bit about the team I'm on and what we're kind of doing and some of the future that we see as well as kind of the overall kind of environment and industry around us. So my name is Eric Dame. I'm a senior solutions architect at AWS, Amazon Web Services. I've been here going on 11 years. For most of the time, been a couple different roles. Most of the time before that, working directly with customers, helping them use AWS in a variety of ways. Late last year, I joined this new team called the AIRE team. That's the AI Readiness and Engagement team. I bring that up because, well, there's some play on words from some of the stuff we built using AIRE as the idea there. But our team was kind of founded around, hey, we're talking to customers about AI. We should really be building production grade systems with AI so we can actually talk to them about what we learned, some of the good things, the bad things, and just the things we've learned, but also just having that muscle and that experience building something using really an AI native approach. Also, how do we transform the primarily the AWS SA or Solution Architect organization, but also some other organizations that we kind of work with, some sister organizations, if you will, brother organizations. Um, how do we actually use AI every day to meaningfully change the way we work? Take away some of the undifferentiated heavy lifting, if you will, or like the checking Slack channels or creating emails or some of the stuff that you can kind of really use AI for or agentic for. Um, and then the last part is how do we tell customers about this? How do we share what we learn? So part of this is doing things like this, but also speaking directly one-on-one or one-to-many kind of conversation with customers. Just got off a call this morning with a customer that's doing something similar and kind of sharing stories along the way. Okay, so I kind of already stepped over all this, I guess, but this is kind of a three main pillars as mentioned. We're a small team. We're at present date, we're at about 8 people. And so we kind of went on this mission to use AI for as much things as we could and build essentially a agentic control plane for our organization. So as mentioned, we kind of have this group or a fairly large group of solution architects that were in the field working with customers. And we wanted to attack not only the technical part of the problem, but also the human, the people and process kind of side as well. And so we kind of zoomed out and we could kind of tell that there were some folks that were super deep and using all the latest models and different agentic harnesses, and some folks that were still experimenting and dabbling here and there. But we didn't have a common place where everything or everyone could kind of go to see like what agents maybe someone else created, what skills, how do we share those, how do we kind of create a marketplace and really a kind of a flywheel around folks that can build something and share that with either their team or otherwise. Um, we also kind of knew, as mentioned before, we wanted to build something ourselves to then be able to share that experience and also kind of create a platform that we could then drive feature and other feedback towards. And so adding to this sort of platform as we go is a big part of the team that I'm on and what we do as well. And I'll share with you kind of this. I'm going to do a demo here in a second, so this will kind of maybe further contextualize a lot of this. going through the process, and I don't know how many folks are kind of where you all are at. Maybe you can you know either feel free to yell out or maybe in the chat is a better mechanism for that. But if folks are using AI today, are you using, Kiro, Cloud Code, Codex? Are you experimenting? Are you kind of using it every day for either coding tasks or maybe knowledge work type tasks? But kind of our evolution from the team was starting from, obviously the left here as we went through this process of really um, just playing with the models, right? So we primarily have focused on Anthropic and the Claude kind of ecosystem, but a variety of other harnesses and models as well. Um, and as we kind of progressed, we were at first, which we've seen a lot of other folks do, is that we kind of have one or two agents that we're using, on our laptop, right? So it was, hey, we have a task. Maybe we were sort of vibing just a little bit on, we wanted to create a feature for this platform that we've created. And we'd sort of somewhat loosely sort of tell the agent what we want to build and have it go kind of build it. We quickly realized that if we're going to create production grade and frankly AWS and Amazon required go through the rigor of pushing code like an AWS or Amazon team would, we're going to have to adopt something different. And so we really adopted this spec-driven approach. You might have heard it like AIDLC or I think there's a couple other flavors of it. RPI, I believe, is one research plan to implement, but we kind of anchored on the spec-driven approach. And I'll kind of show for folks that are not familiar, I'll kind of show what that is as well. But the main point I'm trying to make here is we went through a progression of onesie twosie agents. Then we went through let's do spec driven, but also have multiple agents running on on our laptops, so we could do like multiple coding at once and do Git checkouts and Git work trees. And then we realized towards the right here that we actually needed an orchestration layer. We needed kind of a higher level abstraction of being able to create a spec with the AI's help, and then add some human gates along the way to then at the end of it be able to commit that code and have it go through our pipelines and then into production. And again, I'll outline that down the line here. But what I wanted to share was just the progression of kind of we went through of experimentation, learning. And on the far right, what's not shown here, and you might be like, well, why is it sort of leveling out a little bit? Well, the code quality here was you know, roughly 10 to 20x higher. So we also are measuring our commits and then, whether things are reverted back or they're bug fixes, and we kind of doing some other heuristics there. But basically, the end of the day, like using this orchestration layer with the spec-driven development with Markdown and steering files, we really to get a much higher quality from a code perspective. So again, it's highlighting kind of this. We went through like this idea of one Kiro. Like we typically were anchoring on Kiro CLI. We actually went through let's use Kiro IDE first. I quickly went through Kiro CLI. I haven't touched an IDE in quite a while now. I'm using a mix of primarily the harness wise, it's Kiro CLI with Cloud Code CLI. As mentioned, kind of, I almost only use the IDE now for diffs or even just to look at certain Markdown files just because it renders it a little nicer. And then we moved to the spec-driven multi-agent kind of deployment model or part of our life cycle or software development life cycle loop. And then we quickly moved to this orchestration layer. And again, I'll show you kind of what that is down in the next couple of slides here and actually give you a demo of what we built. But the idea is we're starting off with on the left side or the current, let's call it a feature that we're going to build, what the intent of that is. We'll almost always use another agent to actually help spec or help create and flesh out that a little bit. You could think of this as like the initial Jira ticket as maybe the starting point, right? And then that gets routed to the orchestration layer. And then we have a human that comes in, or myself or someone else, to actually view that spec and then kind of start the development lifecycle, the coding or development process. There's a question or a hand up.
Yeah, Eric, quick question. You mentioned you typically use a different agent to do the spec. Are you doing that as sort of a separation of duties from a security standpoint, or kind of what's the logic behind that?
It's a little bit of that, but really it's more about um, as a human, the AI. So we have a general purpose agent that helps craft these or just kind of knows about our spec process. So frankly, it's just better at thinking through that a bit more than I am or a human is typically. So that's kind of the main reason. And so I also just have an agent kind of running all the time in the background that I ask questions to, and so I kind of use that as the leverage point. So that's kind of the backstory there, if that helps.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we've got a couple of questions
Yeah.
and if you need to punt these to the end. Joe
Oh,
asked,
great.
was the orchestration layer able to handle cross concerns?
Um, Cross concern. So I think I know what you're saying, but I'm not so we have specifically, and again, I'll show you this in a second. Like we have, our boundary is an autonomous agent has a separate checkout of the code, works on a separate branch, and then actually uses a separate distinct AWS account to then go through the full life cycle of deployment and then testing. Um, so Joe, if that's your question, we're not. We are experimenting with sort of like if we have 20 of these running, do we have almost another layer where it's like looking at the Git check-ins or other telemetry to kind of balance it out, whether to prevent merge or sort of commit issues. But we're kind of not necessarily doing that today.
Well, this is good, Eric. This is a lot of engagement. If you want to punt some of these, let me know because we've got like four more questions here. Aaron had a question on the phase 2 slide. And guys, we've got a small enough group. You could ask your question in chat, and then Aaron, if you wanted to just come off a mute here and ask your question.
I'm not sure. Was this the actual two?
I
I
think
have.
that was the phased. You were showing sort of
Oh,
the
this thing. Yeah.
yeah.
The question was, can you bring that up again? Thanks.
Aaron, are you able to come off a mute and ask your question, or put it here in the chat?
Maybe they just wanted to see that again or something.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
sorry about that. I was just I was doing a Slack at the same time.
Anyway.
Oh, the you went from phase one slide, which was a couple, I guess was a slide after this, right? Is phase one in your
Oh yeah, yeah. Yep.
implementation. Then yeah, the singletons and then the phase two. I missed yeah,
Gotcha.
so the multi-agent, that was like a lot there. So
Yeah.
my question is when you're decomposing into units, right? So we've had this sort of thermostatics of anti-monolith for a decade, pro
Yeah.
micro, you know where I'm going, pro microservices, everything's, you a kid selling cookies and you're like, where's your microservice at the grocery store? And and then now seems like we're coming back to something, not maybe not in the middle, but we'll call it like manageable, smaller, modular is what everyone's calling it now, modular monoliths, just because you reduce the toil and the redundancy. Do you see a similar risk as you decompose into tons of sort of we'll call it micro specs around agents where you're just sort of like we'll call it like the agent inventory that you then have to try to harness is very similar like those large massive fleets of microservices, which I'm sure you've put out of your head, uh, all that work we did in the late 2010s.
Yeah.
And so hopefully that makes some sense when I'm asking there, like, how to get so that we don't really got to go down that same path, because what I experience is you just run out of money, like just at the simplest level, right? And you wind up needing all of this infrastructure. Back then the SRE and the DevOps type infrastructure, which now is going to be basically ML driven, SRE, ML ops, whatever. And you just can't license all that infrastructure to manage, 25,000 agents or five, whatever, a zillion agents, whatever it'll be, especially if they're so, um, composable, that it's the same. We ran into this, I've been around since the 90s with object libraries doing C++ back then. It was just,
Yep.
you're building these 25,000 object libraries, it's unmanageable. Like, do you find like that's a similar risk, or is there some auto magical AI thing I'm missing here?
So I won't answer the full question now because I think I'll demonstrate some of your answers, some of your questions, and when I go through the demo. But like, there's a lot to that. But I think the net of it is our we built up this essentially this control plane. The architecture behind the scenes is still microservices and sort of like the infrastructure that's supporting that. And that cost perspective is actually like ridiculously low. I think it's like $500 a month, but that's not factoring obviously token costs. So our model, which I'll show down the line here, is we took a conscientious approach to actually, let me just jump ahead to kind of do this model where client side is like, for lack of a better term, right? Like versus server side. So for example, we're using our, each employee's laptop as to launch the agent onto with configuration and compliance and other things on top of that. And then obviously inference is going to the cloud or Bedrock in this example. Um, but so we're using kind of like your CPU cycles to do a lot of this stuff. There's also like the other model, which maybe you're referring to is, whether it's agent core harness, that's kind of in preview, but or even agent core agents themselves. There's infrastructure there that you have to think about and kind of manage. Um, I, I think like I said, I think I'll show some of this and I'll answer some of that question there. I think it's at the end of the day, it's just a value trade-off of
Yep.
like, yeah, if you have 100 agents that are giving you zero value, then you've wasted 100 times the cost of those agents, right? So like, you really just still need to keep that in mind. That you don't get any points for having 1,000 agents versus one, right? Uh, at the end of the day.
No, this is interesting because it means that we're going to have to invest more in that the classic front end, client and user care model, because when they have a problem, right, something goes haywire, they downloaded the wrong patch, whatever, that somebody's going to have to jump in just like you would in a traditional, kind of desktop setting for desktop support. So we're really going to have to add agentic support to the traditional L1 to L4 client care on the client desktop side, which is a lot cheaper, but pretty powerful. So I like that actually. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think that whole sort of part of the industry is definitely forming as well. Like, as you said, like injecting AI into whether it's reducing your MTTRs or whatever the metric is, like of resolving something. And I think a lot of this as I'll talk through is like we're resolving a lot of this before we even push the code. So that whole shift to left kind of concept that
Yep.
like we actually are really doing it now in the sense of we have we have about four different code reviews and security reviews and other things that are happened as part of our personal agentic loop before that code even gets commit for a human to review, right? So and we're packaging in about a bunch of best practices and kind of standards with that. So yeah, anyways, we can certainly talk more sort of
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
more.
I
Yeah.
spoke too much there, but no, I really
No,
appreciate
no,
it.
you're good. You're good.
That's a great
Um,
question. Yeah,
I
and
think there was another hand.
Eric,
Okay.
I assume you're going to get to this. Said was asking what tools you're using for multi-agent coordination.
Yeah, it's a homegrown thing. I'll demo it here in a second. It's fairly like I guess straightforward in some ways. We call it the Bobs, but I'll show it to you in like maybe 5 minutes here, if that's okay. And I'm gonna cough real quick. Sorry.
No, it's definitely water time. Great questions, everyone. It's nice to see this level of engagement.
Yeah,
So,
and I have to stay towards the end, like past the end too, just for questions and stuff. I have some time after this. But okay, I wanted to just make sure I ground kind of some stuff I'm saying in reality here. And so, what is this thing you kept talking about? We call it the AIRE Traffic Control. This is that control plane I've mentioned dozens of times so far, probably. And this is our agentic platform that holds agent skills, what we call prompt templates. These are kind of reusable prompts you might be using that are matched with models and skills. Automations. So, again, one of the really powerful things here, since we are doing this client side, is maybe have a regularly scheduled cron style or automated style thing you want to do, and to kick off every hour, or maybe based on an event even, we can do things like that. And then of course we're tracking things like value, and just understanding ROI per agent and also per task. And I'll talk a little bit more about the hooks and things we're using to sort of see that value in some of the things we're thinking about, because it's still kind of frankly new, and kind of we want to make sure that we're again kind of getting that value to the, I think it was Aaron's point about we can't have agents going wild consuming all these tokens without any sort of value created, right? ROI is the conversation I'm shifted for every customer I've talked to now, as opposed to like 2 months ago. Um, so I think I hope everyone, or I think everyone's probably familiar with the concept of MCPs. So again, like we have this MCPs are part of this platform that you can kind of pick and choose if you want, as part of the air traffic control. We also really adopted, excuse me, really adopted this idea of skills. Anthropic made that pretty popular towards the beginning of the year, I believe. So we really kind of doubled down on that, and we use that as part of we kind of have that a spec that we adhere to and ensure that we're following that sort of effectively that whole like spec that's sort of public. And also, there's a local aspect or a CLI aspect to this, because you can't have, you know, I think it was Aaron that's kind of alluded to, like we're going back in time in some places. We're CLIing again, right? So like agents really like CLIs. They're way more token efficient, and just way easier for kind of sometimes for auth and other things. But the agents really seem to like CLIs. So we also developed a CLI you can launch these things from as well. So some of the results, real quick, is also we've trying to create this flywheel of, we're not just building these tools for funsies. We're building them so folks can use them and change the way they work. Part of that is also encouraging and fostering this idea of a builder mindset, right? And so um, the community has contributed over 100 skills, or excuse me, 300 skills, 100 agents, a variety of other things as well. So you kind of get this. Your internal teams are, now that AI is so prevalent and most people have access to some sort of harness, you might not, folks that are contributing might not have a traditional software development life, or excuse me, a software development background, and they can build these things as well and contribute to this overall platform that we built. Um, I think I talked through most of this stuff. Again, this is kind of our CLI that we call local ATC. So we have ATC air traffic control is the control plane. Local ATC is kind of I guess agent or that little CLI that lives on your laptop that helps kind of implement and load some of these things. I jumped ahead on this one, but again, the idea here and the conscientious or the conscious choice we took was, hey, let's use kind of the uh, auth N and auth Z, the authorization layer that we have already as part of like an employee at AWS. Let's also use our laptops, in some respects, like as the CPU cycles, and launching our harnesses there, and then also being able to get like the power here we found is being able to enrich the LLM with, your notes you took from a meeting, or maybe if you use Salesforce or another CRM, or other systems that you might have MCP or other access to, and kind of combining those two together gives you some pretty like powerful results that you can really, again, from a knowledge worker and kind of a day-to-day kind of worker perspective, they're really super helpful. Um, Okay, so let's jump ahead here to the demo. So this is my demo environment. So these I've kind of fudged some of the names and stuff and removed some things. So this is again demo environment. But the idea is we have this UI that you as a user can log into. You can start here and say, this is kind of semantic search behind the scenes. Then you can say, hey, I want to do a code review. I want to check my email or build a weekly report of you know some data source, whatever it might be. You can kind of start here. But we have this concept of community agents and then sort of this curated list of agents that we think everyone probably get use out of. And we also have a maintain section. If you built an agent, um, you can kind of maintain your own agent as well. I think there's a question.
Hi. Yes. This is Mohsin. I'm a AI engineer based here in Dallas. So my question is just maybe it has to be in the beginning, but
Yeah.
did you put any success criteria, the KPI, the metrics that you want to control, that you want to make sure that your application, your platform should have any success, any criteria that you pause or you put in the beginning just to uh, so you cannot, I mean, accept your application not doing those things.
You mean in terms of what the agents and other things can do, or just like what does good look like from our user community and like our, like the folks using our system, which
Right. So for not for individual agents, but for the whole application, for this whole system, what is good for you? What is the metrics that you put to actually say that you finish the system is doing what it's meant to do?
um yeah, so I guess a variety of different things. We have a bunch of telemetry and metrics that we're capturing, and so we don't store or look at any prompts, but we do categorize them using almost like an LLM as a judge kind of model, where it's like if you did research or coding or some sort of email or Slack, communication, whatever it might be, we kind of categorize that, and then as I kind of mentioned, we have this value metric that we're still frankly kind of formulating slash developing, but for right now, we're categorizing each one of those. We have about, I think it's 10 or so categories. We're categorizing those up, and then we're saying we're having another LLM come by and say, hey, if Eric did research for something, what was the output, and like what would that normally take, right, for a human to do? And let's say it would normally take an hour or something. We use the kind of these, um, kind of these. We're kind of using a value metric, I guess, to sort of do that. And then the other part of it, which you may or may not be asking, is kind of evals, right? So I'm sure folks have, or maybe you're not, but maybe you're familiar with evals. So evaluating not only if you change the models behind the scenes, you're getting the same output and I guess success criteria, for lack of a better term, but also if your prompt or if you're in your agentic workflow, if you're handing off to another agent at some point, or if you're how many tool calls you're making, like all that stuff we're sort of capturing and kind of normalizing in some way, but also running some analysis on it to again, the ultimate goal is, are you using these tools not just to say you're using them, but actually to drive kind of something from it? And I think it's probably goes without saying, but like that's still in it. We're still iterating on that process, right? We're still trying to figure out what good looks like there, but that's kind of some of our process so far. If that helps.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. And so from here, like Air Neo is kind of our agent that we built. This is kind of knows a little bit about how we work at AWS and our different personas. You can launch that agent directly by clicking this button. Behind the scenes, we're taking some of that configuration. You might have attached some skills. You might have attached some MCPs. We're kind of building all that behind the scenes. Here we have MCPs. We have some skills that are already attached, those sorts of things. And then I can pull that back up. Oops. And then we built, and then sort of in this case, we're launching Kiro, like I said before. We also have Cloud Code as a harness we launch, and then Codex right around the corner as we'll support as well. But from here, you can, type whatever you want to type, like it can be my daily briefing or, create a, um, a AWS diagram that are people still doing three-tier architectures? Three-tier architecture, right? It's a classical thing. What I can't spell, of course, because everyone's watching. Anyways, you get the idea. Maybe we'll come back to that. But that's kind of like, you do a number of other things. And then that's kind of again, the super quick overview of like the agentic platform. We also have some other things that are built in there from an admin perspective, but also we're kind of the next iteration is we're thinking of how do we package all these things together and then present them to a user based on their persona, based on their organization, and based on kind of what what they might be interested in. So if you're in different group or teams, you might want a different sort of curated set of packages. Let's see. And then there's a question around how are we handling invalid intents given the single agent solution designs? What happens when a user asks something outside the agent's supported scope? Oh, yeah, there's two things there. We have I think the question was around like how do we, if you ask what's the stock quote or something, or maybe other things that we don't necessarily want our agents to answer. There's two parts to that. We have kind of a steering or a routing layer. Actually, this is a perfect example. Within this Neo agent, for example, and the other agents, we kind of have a layer that looks for things like that and will kind of default you to, sorry, I can't answer that kind of responses. The models themselves, depending on the models you use, are actually pretty good. So it's kind of a belt and suspenders approach. Like Anthropic specifically is pretty good about like kind of guiding you the right way there. And so it's a little bit of like we can't really rely on that necessarily, but we have some kind of we have guardrails basically that make sure the user's aligned and it's not answering uh, um, every question that someone might have, rather than what's maybe pertinent to their job. And that's a bit of a whack-a-mole thing too, frankly, because um, sometimes that changes a bit, but that's kind of our general guidance there, or what we're doing. So just to quickly, oh yeah, go ahead, Joe.
Concerning the concern question earlier on the first slide, you mentioned that there were issues with cross concerns. That's what the slide said, presumably meaning different components with similar uses have trouble dealing with the same thing. Did that get resolved with your orchestration approach?
Um, Say more. Are you talking about like a code base specifically, or are you talking about like merge conflicts, or am I off base here?
Well, for code, for example,
Yeah.
one piece of code might deal with authentication in some way, and another piece might need to deal with authentication. That would be like a cross concern. They're both dealing with authentication. And I'm guessing your slide mentioned that, cross concern. So I'm guessing that, there were some issues with the agent doing that. Did that get resolved later on?
Oh, yeah. So, um, I think that what I was kind of referring to there was more specifically around like kind of squashing or stomping on each other. So like if you have, it's not as prevalent for us because we're an eight-person team, but if you have a larger team, you might have someone that's working on, like the same part of the code base, for example, or something. Um, but ultimately that gets fleshed out by our the after the commit and through our pipeline. Um, we have a build layer, which most people do, but we have like a builds, and then we also have a deployment. And so between those two, and then also we have, as I kind of mentioned before in the beginning, like we have a couple of agents that are run to do like autonomous code reviews. So they catch kind of some of that as well. So most of that stuff gets essentially fleshed out as kind of part of that single person loop, and then before it even hits like the code review. Um, So yeah.
Thanks. Are you having to do a lot of human corrections or any human corrections of the code?
Yeah, so I'd say I don't know if I have a slide. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so just to kind of again like make it a bit more concrete, we are we've seen progression there. So I think iteration here is super key. So this isn't a situation where you create this, in our case, this orchestration layer, this Bob, and then like set it and forget it, right? It's really we're constantly iterating back into it. And so, for example, to your point, when we initially created this, we had a variety of different issues that came up, or I know we had some merge issues. We had some, we're always trying to increase code quality, obviously, and testing. We kind of increased our to give a concrete example, we increased our code overlay or our code per check-in per new line like to a certain percentage, like pretty high. And that was always failing. And so then we were like, okay, well let's tell Bob you must also create test suites and multiple tests, and unit tests and other things, so that our code quality and our code coverage matched the amount of change that we had in that specific commit, for example. Um, so I guess to answer your question, it's gotten better and it's progressing the right way. We measure that as well. And I kind of in the one other slide I was talking about how once we switched to this orchestration layer and we got much higher quality, I guess, code and less human in interaction in that sense. We still always have a human in the loop for certain design decisions, but also at the final code review before commit to main or before it goes into our pipeline. We still have a human gate there. But I guess to be succinct here, yes, it's gotten better, and but we're also constantly looping and iterating through and making, in this case, we call it the Bobs. We're making the Bobs better every day, and so every day we're actually committing back to the Bobs.
Thanks. Do you think we're close to the point where, for example, a typical corporate software manager would allow this type of approach for his team?
So, I mean, I, I think so. I mean, I think we're kind of doing that. I think that we're like a pretty good example of that in the sense that we're following our mandated standards by AWS and Amazon even for each code check-in. So we are going through, if you can think of Amazon, like we have all these standards for committing code and a pipeline process that we have to adhere to in different stages. And we meet all those and we have we've gone through the security review process as well. Um, I here's the key insight is it still needs work. So like today, don't like fool yourself, I guess, in like the AI models being so good that you can just point them at your code base and click go and solves everything. You still need to really. I think the thing I keep saying is we've kind of like um, we've kind of put guardrails against the agent in our code base in this case to make it as good and as sort of as efficient, for lack of a better term, like as we have. So like. Um, the key point though is you still need to create some markdown and steering files, codify your team norms, codify like what's good, what's bad, what the agents should do and not do. Get those kind of written down in Markdown, right? So the agents can know about them, and then have these sort of gates, code quality. We have a bunch of analyzers that we run before we push, into our pipeline, like all those things, like we still need, and make all this kind of work for production grade code at the end of the day, right? 0 to 1 is easier than it's ever been, but like that's not a brownfield environment. That's not really like an existing code base. So again, sorry, long-winded kind of answer, but I think
Yeah,
like you just need to kind of
th-
yeah.
yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. That was valuable. One last quick one. It was interesting to hear about the idea of modularized approach to monoliths, that we're going back to that middle ground. Is there some library or other system that is becoming dominant in that type of approach, or is that yet to be developed?
Yeah, so I guess my thoughts on that is I don't know if we're quite there yet. So my quick take is like monoliths are awesome, right? Because you have a single code base that effectively a single system, I guess, behind the scenes that does everything for you. The problem with those is they traditionally haven't scaled or don't scale, and that's kind of where we went with the microservice and distributed architecture. So at the end of the day, it depends on your system and what you're building. What's I think the sort of trade-offs you still need to think about are like, don't fool yourself again and like AI will solve all your problems because um but like it does make it way easier and to have kind of a monolith app if you can get away with it, right? Like if it's for 100 users and the scope of that platform or product is such that you could do that, then yeah, why not? Whereas, if you're a web scale company and you're building the next, you know, social platform, please don't do that. But like if you are, you probably still want microservices on some level, I think.
Thanks. I'm a little surprised we don't yet have just a standard list of these components that everybody uses.
Yeah, I think there's probably some here and there, but yeah, to your point, there's maybe not a coverage, but yeah, thanks, Joe. Is it Munchie or sorry? I think there's a question, hands up.
Yes.
I
Yeah,
butchered your
Marcy,
name.
yes.
I'm so sorry.
So thank you. So I just want no. So for the I just want to for someone who is actually developing this, like you mentioned that you have sub agent. I want just to know, like in the process developing this sub agent, are you checking like when you say you have monolith, but you also have sub agent, then is it like you are saying that this agent should do this, and this is the metrics they have. Then you develop each agent individually, and you evaluate them, you test them individually until they are done, and you're sure that they're doing what you're asking them to do, and then you integrate them in the whole platform. Are you doing like that, or are you basically saying that I'll just develop them all in once and test them how they work in all together in a in a system way, kind of.
Yeah, in our case, it's a yes and I guess is so it's there's kind of two modes. One is our team kind of creates a subset or a smaller set of the agents. We do that through we sort of still, at the end of the day, that's all just code, right? So we're still kind of going through the typical development process for that, and we have you know static code scanning, cross vulnerability, like all the good security things, sort of as part of that life cycle. And then for our platform, when you upload an agent or a skill, there's another layer of scanning that goes through. Behind the scenes, there's also an even another layer where we store the data plane, I guess, if you will, and the data itself. And then if you're a user and you're creating your own skill or agent, the same thing applies to you. So I guess it's effectively the same process, whether you're kind of this community driven or it's where our team's helping build one. Um, so the gates and I guess we're still, to answer your question, we're still kind of using a traditional SDLC kind of flow there. Um, uh, but yeah, I guess from a deployment or like from perspective of like um, how do you mitigate the proliferation of all these different things, agents that maybe do similar things? We also kind of have this dedupe mechanism as well. So it's like if you're going to upload something that's already there, then we'll sort of point the user to that or say, hey, use this agent instead is another mechanism there. So it's kind of a mix of different mechanisms or approaches.
Right. So because I'm asking because sometimes like when I develop agent and I have to fix something like in one agent, and as you mentioned, they are connected through skills, through tools, and sometimes you have to modify these MCPs or something. Then the other agent may be not working because of the update that you have done, and that's actually create this problem of like I went through it, through and
Eval.
through, like looping through it.
Yeah, you need
Yeah.
eval. So like that's the boring part, right? Or maybe not as fun. It's like you need some sort of eval framework that you can then every time something gets changed, you can know whether it's getting better or worse at the end of the day, right? And then you need to come up with some coherent, you know, testing construct that'll then baseline your agent and your skill kind of combination. Um, I, yeah, so that's kind of like that's the process there. It's a little it's a little one. It's one that you definitely have to iterate through sometimes, but we've had pretty good I guess luck there or whatever. But yeah, evals is kind of the key. I think the key point there.
Right. Thank
You
you.
gotta know the drift, yeah. Oh, and also tracing. I don't know if you're using tracing, but like if you think about that's a good if you have some sort of tracing that you can as part of like different tool calling and thing. Because like the reality is what typically happens is like maybe your tool call times out, right, or something like that, or the MCP is disconnected. Like being able to get those OTel or other metrics like super important.
Yeah, and folks,
Oh,
I'm going to pause some questions till the end here. Eric has been very gracious and I love the interaction, but I'll feel bad if he doesn't get
oh
through
yeah.
his
No, this is
presentation
great.
here.
The intent here is to help share and learn as well, and so like I appreciate it. But yeah, so we can kind of fast forward. I did want to show the Bobs real quick. So this is the Bobs. This is our autonomous sort of agent. Again, it's um, I'm, I'm I'm missing the word, but it's aligned, I guess is the word I want to use. It's aligned to our code base with a variety of markdowns and steering files, but also with some sub agents and agents that kind of we have tweaked over time, right? To sort of again at the end of the day produce quality code. But the Bob's kind of starts off with, I'll just kind of walk through it super quick. But the idea here is it's a builder agent again that's somewhat aligned to our to coding in our environment, but it uses the right now it's using the Kiro CLI harness. It also works with Cloud Code as well though, but mostly, or I should say, always some sort of Cloud model where it's Sonnet or Opus, and we can actually tweak depending on what stage it's in. We kind of have these different stages: a spec generation stage, implementation, the CR code review stage, and remediation. We can actually tweak the models if we wanted to, depending on what's the latest models and that kind of stuff. But the idea here is the flow is you would get a Jira task, or let's just call it something like that. It could be a JSON payload, whatever it might be. You add that here. In this case, we might want to do like a hard reset, right? Just to have the right rebase for a repo, and in this case, we're aligning it to a repo, and then we kind of can add some annotation or starting instructions here and click assign and go. I won't do all that, but in this case, each one of these Bobs and the key part here that we've gotten a lot of value from that others might too is each one of these Bobs is a separate harness that has a separate code base that's checked out, aligned to it, which then also is aligned to a separate AWS account. So at the end of this whole, you go through the process of creating the spec, reviewing the spec, approving the spec, and then usually it'd be a spec here and an approval button. I click approve. The code development starts, and then at the end of that is a build and deploy into our AWS environment. I just did a thumbs up. Um, And so at the end of that, we can also do some end-to-end tests, right? And we can ensure that our personal deployment of this is working, kind of one box, whatever we want to call it. So that's actually given us a lot of lets us keep the code quality up, as previous folks have mentioned, but also allows us to do and actually as a user, you can actually go and click on the website and actually go play with the feature you just built, right? For example. So this has worked really well for us. I know other folks are looking at other container and other mechanisms, but like again, this is kind of what we've sort of done here. Just wanted to show that real quick. I think the just to wrap like all this up, really the idea is if you're starting at zero or even maybe you're a little bit have started, our kind of end-to-end playbook, so to speak, is really about um, creating a spec first, so we're not burning tokens or wasting a ton of time. Having a human review that, then having the agent build inside our harness, and then at the end of it, having AI also go back and review any changes or fixes. We have another agent that runs that does a code review, and then before we even cut that CR, we've gone through, several rounds of reviews, and then we have a human come through and actually do the code review, right? So we still have the human in the loop there and the human gate before that is approved by someone on our team, and then the merge can happen or start, and that goes, flows down into our pipeline. A bunch of other checks happen along the way, as well as it goes through our different stages or environments as well. Okay. The other thing I didn't touch on, I'll touch on real quick. I was talking tech. Part of this is we're trying to get people and process and folks to think differently about what we're doing. It's really easy to go back to, oh man, the LLM gave me the wrong answer. I'm going to go back and do it the way I was doing it. I get it. That happens. But we're really trying to change and have folks try to sort of work differently. And as part of that, we've developed this champions program, right? So getting folks that are really interested in this stuff, getting a kind of a coalition or a group or a champion group to help that. And they've been instrumental in pushing adoption across our org, but also just showing what's possible to others and getting them excited about it and building as well. I guess I won't belabor this too much, but sort of again, it's all about ROI and all about measuring some sort of cost. So we have hooks that we have. I think all the harnesses at this point have some sort of hook you can create. So think of that as after a tool call or after a prompt, categorizing what that is, and then attributing that in some sort of value. In our case, with the Bobs produces the code. It then back to our ticket. It'll say, "Hey, I took X amount of tokens to create this feature or solve this task, whatever it might be." It then actually reviews the task to see like how big that feature is, how complex it is, and then how much time maybe were saved, and kind of measures that against the true cost of that activity. And so thinking through that is super important as well. Okay, here's the fun part. So this is a quick teaser. We're looking to usually when I talk to customers about this, they kind of want to know like, is this a product or something and they can buy or use? And right now it's we have an open sources, but here's what we're thinking. And this is kind of a newer concept, and I'd love to get any feedback on this. But the idea is instead of open sourcing the actual code and then immediately getting into, supporting that, and then also, with the PR kind of onslaught, especially with AI these days. Like we're thinking of open sourcing the spec. So how did we distilling down what we built into a series of specs, and then also kind of a harness around that then says you as a customer can actually build your own version of this. And so a couple examples would be like build your own Bob, build your own Thomas agent, I guess, and then also build your own ATC or sort of agentic control plane, as well as build your own kind of development kit. So getting from sort of zero to one, or I guess zero to started with whatever harness you're using in the environment. And so like the idea is like, here's the rough plan or here's the recipe. We put it in maybe cooking terms, and you get to pick your own ingredients that make sense for your environment, you as the customer, etc. So more to come there. That's a quick teaser, sorry, but something I'll share, and maybe we can get kind of once that's public, we can kind of maybe share that back here to the community or with Kathy or whoever. But I think that's it. Yeah, so that's. I know we're kind of short on time or up on time, but I will stay behind if there's any other questions or anything else. I have about 15 minutes or so after this if folks want to continue the conversation. I'll also be doing something similar, I think, in Northern Virginia, or the HQ2 as we call it. If folks are local there, love to meet anyone that is on the East Coast.
Awesome. And Eric, I'm going to stop the recording.
Yeah.
So thank you all for your time. As Eric said, please stick around. We'll do some Q&A.
Yeah, thank you so much, by the way.